Well, welcome everybody. We're so happy to see you here. Some faces that I recognize and some new faces. Um, every once in a while, we have some good news to share that the Pennsylvania legislature has actually done something that we're happy about. And so that's a great thing that we're sharing tonight and things that all of us can get involved in. And I will wait another minute or two, and then I will do a reading. But most of our program, we're going to be talking about the recently passed Solar for Schools and how everybody can get involved in it and what it means. We're happy to answer all the questions anybody might have about Solar for Schools as we go through the program. So I'm always looking for new and interesting different books to read. And I went to the library recently and I found this book that's called, I don't know if it's going to show real well on the screen. No, it's called What We Owe the Future by William McCaskill. William McCaskill is a moral philosopher, and he asks us to consider the long term, where he calls it the long termism. And three ways that we should be considering the long term is by three primary metaphors that he raises. The first is of humanity is an imprudent teenager. Most of the teenager's life is still ahead of them, and their decisions can have lifelong impacts. In choosing how much to study, what career to pursue, or which risks are too risky, they should think not just about the short-term thrills, but about the whole course of a life ahead of them. And he sees our lives as the future lives. The second is the history as molten glass. At present, society is still very malleable and can be blown into many shapes. But at some point, the glass might cool, set, and become much harder to change. The resulting shape could be beautiful or deformed, or the glass could shatter altogether, depending on what happens when the glass is still hot. And his third metaphor is the path toward the long-term impact as a risky expedition into uncharted terrain. In trying to make the future better, we don't know exactly what threats we will face or even exactly where we are trying to go, but nevertheless, we can prepare ourselves. We can scout out the landscape ahead of us, ensure the expedition is well resourced and well coordinated, and despite uncertainty, guard against those threats that we are aware of. So by choosing wisely, we can be pivotal in putting humanity on the right course. And if we do, our great grandchildren will look back and thank us. Knowing what we did, we could give them a wonderful world that is beautiful and just. So as we think about the future, tonight we had the option of molding that future, of taking that molten glass and doing something better with it. So I'm really happy to introduce Liz Robinson, who is the executive director of the Philadelphia Energy Association. She is a true expert on solar, and she has been one of the people who's been working for many years for Pennsylvania to become more of a solar state. But we've had our share of setbacks. So having a success is something that I'm so happy that many of us were part of. Many of us called our legislators to push this idea, and now it's something that we need to make happen. So Liz, we're so happy to have you here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Phyllis. It's always great to spread the word about solar. So nice to meet all of you. And I'm going to talk tonight about the Solar for Schools Act. It was signed into law last month, and the legislature passed the Solar for Schools bill. And I want to really give kudos to Elizabeth Fiedler, who's a representative from South Philly. Liz just did a masterful job of shepherding this bill through. And I have never seen a legislator work harder for a piece of legislation. And she just did this incredible job. It was really, really smart. Um, and then once the bill was passed, the legislature authorized $25 million in funding for schools to go solar. So these are grants. It's not a loan program, it's a grant program from the state. The law will be, it's in the process of being figured out exactly how this is going to work. So the design of this Solar for Schools program is underway, and the administrative entity is going to be the Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED. The law number is Act 68, so it's Pennsylvania Act 68, if you want to look at the details. And the law provides that the state DCED must come up with the guidelines and publish those guidelines within 90 days of the passage. So they have until roughly the end of September to do so. So we're actually meeting with them next week to help them think through how best to do this. There is some detail in the law as to exactly how this is going to work. The grants can be up to 50% of the cost of the system. But whether the state will go that large remains to be seen, to be frank. In a state as large as Pennsylvania, with as many schools as we have, $25 million will go very quickly. So DCED is going to have to decide whether they want to fund, a few schools with huge grants or a lot of schools with smaller grants. And there are a number of states. I was just on the phone this morning with Minnesota. Minnesota has had a really successful solar schools grant program. It's administered by their Department of Commerce. And that program is now in its kind of second generation. They went through their first tranche of funding and funded about 48 schools with the first batch of funds that they had. And now the legislature approved a second, even larger allocation. So they've been running this program since 2021. So their experience is something that I'm hoping that Pennsylvania will draw from and really learn from. It's a very, very successful program. And so there are a couple of other states that have really good programs as well. So Solar Schools is it's a unique win-win situation. And I'll go into that a little bit more. I'm going to share some slides with you. Before this bill passed last year, a year ago, we, the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association, completed a solar schools toolkit for all schools. And we did it in anticipation of all the new funding. And I'll just go through that for you so that you can see that this is really a compelling time for schools to consider going solar. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up these slides. Where'd they go? They were here a moment ago. Okay. And let me see if I can just start this from the beginning. Can you all see these? Sorry, can you? Yes.
Yes.
Great. All right, let me see if I can just show you one at a time. Okay. All right. So the Solar Schools Toolkit was produced for the Department of Environmental Protection, and it can be found on their website or on our website. And so you can access it at these links, and I'm happy to share these slides with you afterward. And so in developing this toolkit, what we wanted to do was bring in all of the new funding and all of the new resources and lay it out in a step-by-step process for schools to make it really simple. And there are many, many schools in Pennsylvania that have already gone solar. Back in about 10 years ago, there was some additional funding, some federal funding, and a number of schools went solar at that time. The school on the right here, this one, is a 1.3 megawatt system right outside of Harrisburg. The district is Steelton High Spire, and this is a really fascinating project. This array and one other array provide 100% of the district's load. It's a very small school district, so the combined total is 1.3 megawatts. This one is probably going to be more typical for, cities and small towns. This is a rooftop system, and it will not provide the full. It's not going to provide 100% of the district's load, but multiple buildings can be done. So the toolkit lays out 10 steps. And the really compelling reason that we did this is the Inflation Reduction Act. The IRA is an incredible game changer for schools. The Inflation Reduction Act changes the way tax exempt entities can use the tax credit. In the past, the tax credit was only available if you had a tax obligation. And now the tax credit is returned to tax exempt entities in the form of a direct payment. And so the toolkit lays out all of the details for the tax credit. In most parts of Pennsylvania, the tax credit is going to be even larger than 30%. 30% is the minimum. And in most of Pennsylvania is in what they call an energy community. An energy community is a community that has experienced fossil fuel development, either coal or gas. And most of Pennsylvania qualifies. And the toolkit has a map, which is right here. If you click on this link, it goes to the federal map and shows you where, and you can plug in the address of your school and it'll tell you if you qualify. So it's a minimum of 30%, and most schools will qualify for 40. That is kind of the given. There are a couple of other adders, but frankly, I don't think they're going to apply to most schools. One of them is a domestic content adder, 10% for that. The difficulty is that the demand for solar energy now is so high, and the manufacturing for solar in the United States is still not keeping up with that demand. So it's difficult to meet that one. And then the low income adder is a time limited and also capacity limited. And it started in 2023, and DOE has been flooded with those applications. So I believe that is already been subscribed. So, don't count on those two, but do count on the 30% minimum plus the 10 for the energy communities. So the detail here is for all schools, and also this is true for municipal buildings. So if any of you are on the local municipality, if you're concerned with the municipal buildings, the same thing is absolutely applies here. So for schools, government entities, nonprofit organizations of any kind, and rural electric co-ops, the investment tax credit is now an elective payment. It's also called direct payment, which simply means that the IRS will send you a check after the system is installed. You complete your tax filing, and the IRS sends you a refund. So it comes back to you in the form of a check, which is an incredible game changer. Solar is very advantageous for everyone, but schools have specific and additional conditions that makes solar even more important for schools. So the first one, energy bill savings, This applies to everyone. Solar is going to offset your electricity consumption, and it's going to save you money. For schools, it can also reduce your peak, and there can be additional savings with peak savings. It's not guaranteed. You can earn, schools will also earn solar renewable energy credits. An SREC is an ongoing form of revenue. It's a payment that'll come back to the school every time you generate a megawatt hour. You earn an SREC. Solar improves resilience, and a number of schools, particularly in floodplains, are really taking seriously their ability to become community resilience hubs. And they're taking that on, which means that in time of an emergency, the school can be a source of stable power, usually just for communications. Obviously, reduces CO2 emissions and helps meet all of our climate goals. And this next one is really important for schools. It turns out that energy is the second largest cost in a school budget. Personnel is first, and energy is second. We are seeing now in Pennsylvania more rate increases. Right now, we're looking in the PICO territory, we're looking at almost a 30% rate increase. That's a really difficult nut for a school to crack. That swallowing a 30% rate increase in their electricity bill when they don't have any source of that money is just really tough. So the stability of the energy cost is incredibly valuable to the school budget. And then the last one, creating educational opportunities. Frankly, the world is decarbonizing and we're all switching to electricity more and more for our end uses. Children really have to understand electricity. STEM education really needs to change to incorporate a much stronger understanding of electricity and how how to really harness the sun and use it. And the presence of a solar system on a school campus creates many opportunities to do that. This illustration is one. This is a school in Pennsylvania that's in a farming community, and they have a farming program, and the kids are learning how these are alpacas that a local farmer grazes underneath the solar panels. So the children are learning, how to take care of these animals and the value of the solar field to play two uses. This area of work is called agrivoltaics. It's a combination of agriculture and photovoltaics. It's a growing area of solar. So this little graphic just lays out these 10 steps, and you start by building a team. Ideally, the team has a finance person in it or access to that finance person. And you really have to have champions. So you got to have the worker bees, the people who are going to get the work done. The next step is to assess your energy use, understand your bill, and there are many parts of this bill, so you really need to take a look at the last year to 2 years of your energy use and really understand your current use, but also think about the future. So right now, a lot of school buses are going electric, and the school may or may not want to charge those buses on the campus. So you may need you may need to plan for new load. I found in interviewing a lot of schools that they were already decarbonizing the entire school. So as the old fuel oil, heating plant went kaput, they had already planned ahead and were replacing that with high efficiency heat pumps. So there's a lot, and in Philly, we've got these old schools that don't even have air conditioning, and many schools are adding air conditioning for the first time. So there's new load that you need to plan for, and you need to think through not only what is your current use, but given how things change over 5 years, what will that look like? What will your future load be? So planning that is important. Now you're going to assess your school and its grounds for the best site. Do you want a rooftop solar system? Do you want to put it on the ground? Do you want a combination? Do you want more than one set of arrays? How is this, where is it going to be located? So there are free tools that are quite amazing. And I've just got two of them here. Solar Edge produces a wonderful tool, and NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, the PV watts calculator. These are super simple. I've taught fifth graders how to use these. They're really simple and very powerful tools. So they're they're not going to give you the final number, but they're going to give you a number that's real close, and it'll give you a ballpark number that you can use for planning. And you can measure how much, given any location on your campus, you can measure how much production you're going to get, what the payback on that system is going to be, how much, you know what I mean? It'll really give you a handle on where to locate your system. This one, number 4, is the key. This is a very key step. There are basically two ways that a school can go. You can decide to own your own system, that's direct ownership, or you can decide to lease the system. And that's usually called third-party ownership or power purchase agreement. It goes by different names depending upon how it's structured, but essentially it's a lease agreement. In the direct ownership path, you get all the benefits. You don't have to share benefits with anybody. You get the tax credit, you get the grants, you get everything. But you also have all the responsibility. You've got to come up with the financing, you've got to pay for it. You got to figure out the financing. You've got to make the decision about the solar installer. And you have to be sure that you figured out how to maintain that system. Usually maintenance is part of the contract with your solar installer. It's not a separate thing. It's part of your contract. That's the normal way to do things. But these decisions rest with you. In the third party ownership, you're not responsible for financing it. The power purchase agreement provider, the PPA provider, comes up with all of the money up front, and they select the contractor. They select the solar installer. So it's much easier. It's a much easier path, but the key decision there is what. So when you lease a system, your key number is, what do you agree to pay for the electricity? What is the rate, the per kilowatt hour charge that you're going to pay? That's the key number. And I did find one school that I interviewed who made the wrong decision, and they agreed to a number that was too high, and they hadn't saved money until the last rate increase. They are in the PP&L territory, and once PP&L raised their rates, like, I don't know, 21% last time, it was quite a huge rate increase, then the school was saving money. But you need to really pay attention to, if you're going with a PPA, what is that kilowatt hour charge? That's a key number. So the next step is to begin to put these things together, evaluate all of the financial benefits of solar to you, and then you secure the financing. If you're going direct ownership, you want to take a look at your cash on hand. You want to take a look at all of the grants. And again, the grants start off with the ITC, the investment tax credit, minimum of 30%. Every major utility in Pennsylvania now is giving rebates for solar for commercial customers. So whether it's a school or a church or municipal building, every major utility in the state is giving a rebate. And that's a one-time, it's not ongoing, but it's a one-time grant. And that's free money. So that's a nice piece of the puzzle here. And then the Pennsylvania Solar Schools Grant. And again, this will be available to all public schools, community colleges, and 2 of our technical institutes in the state. So it's not going to apply to private schools, but all public schools and community colleges. And then the federal government, DOE, has a Renew America school grant. And that has been coming up every year, once a year in November. They open the gate again in November. So take a look at that. And there are schools in Pennsylvania that have won those grants. They can be very significant. So they can be very large. So there's a lot of money available finally for schools. You can also look at public financing. There's going to be much more public finance available. Pennsylvania has been funded for a green bank, and that financing is going to become available within the next year. And then, of course, there's also private finance. One of the things to keep in mind when you're looking at this ITC, the federal government, again, the IRS is going to give you a refund, but that is after the fact. So you have to pay for the system up front. If you decide direct ownership, you got to pay for the system up front and wait for the IRS to give you that refund. So that means you've got to have some kind of financing to bridge that period of time. That period of time can be a year, could be 12 months, it could be 18 months, but that period of time, you've got to have some financing in hand. So bridge financing. And we are hoping that the state will have a school loan program. And the source of that will be PETA, the Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority. So we are hoping that they will be announcing that shortly, and that'll be combined with the solar grant program from the state. So in other words, we're hoping for one single unified application. So as a minimum of paperwork here. So we'll see how that develops. I'm not going to go into all these details, but there are a lot of details that you have to pay attention to. And I just want to pause for a second here and just say that this elective payment, the direct pay from the IRS, is actually a two-step process. Step number one, which they are encouraging you to do now, I got an email from them yesterday saying they want people to take step one right away. Step one is a pre application, it's a qualification. So what you do is you fill out a very simple form, and the IRS qualifies you as eligible. So they assign you a number. They give you a number of, they call it a registration number. And that is the number then when you're finally ready to apply for the ITC, you apply with that registration number showing that your project has been approved. So if you've got a project in the works, you're not quite, finished with it, but you've got a project pretty well defined. As soon as that's the case, you should go ahead and apply to the IRS for the the registration number. And that doesn't take too long. That process does not take too long. So the toolkit has all of these, it's just loaded with information and all of these requirements. And these are links to a lot of federal websites and some other sources of information so that you're always dealing with current information. You're dealing with, because some of these things have refined. They've been tweaked a little bit since we wrote the toolkit, but the links take you directly to those sources. This is the federal grant, the DOE schools grant. And again, they've been releasing this, the RFP for these opens up in November. So hopefully that'll happen again this year. DOE also has a wonderful network of technical assistance providers. So there is technical assistance available from DOE. Step 7 is to issue a request for proposal. The toolkit has a generic RFP in there. It's in Word, and you can change anything that you want to. So it's a template that has been vetted and is a template that is used in this arena. So it's familiar to solar developers. So you can use that if you choose. The next step, of course, is to select your solar installer and issue a contract. Um, and then you oversee the construction of the project. Usually for schools, these systems are installed in the summer when school is out and the campus is quiet. And we've not heard any all the schools that we interviewed, we didn't hear any complaints. That apparently all of these processes went very smoothly. The last step is to monitor the performance and to maintain your system. This is very important because things can happen. So the system is producing data which you have access to, and you can put into the contract that you want the data to be available to you um, in a form that you can connect to it over the internet any way you want. So you could connect to it on a cell phone, you could connect to it on a monitor in the classroom. You could bring that data into the school classroom. That's what we're really urging schools to do, is to require the developer to enable this to be read off of the internet link anywhere so it can be brought into the classroom. The value of this is, again, children can learn a massive amount of information just looking at this data. So they learn graphing, they'll learn the relationship between solar generation and a sunny day. They'll learn the difference between solar generation in September and January. So all of these things, no matter what the age of the child, there's a tremendous amount of information that children will learn just from having access to this data. And they will also, children can be eyes and ears. So, assigning a fifth grade class to monitor this during homeroom, if they still have homeroom, I don't know, but, monitor the system. Is it working today? Is everything the way it should be? The kids check on it and yes, it's working today. Is it, things can happen, inverters can go awry. So, it's very, very important though to make this a living experience and to bring the power of solar energy into the classroom. So PCA has developed fifth and sixth grade science curriculum and accompanying math lessons. And this curriculum is available on our website. It has been aligned to the new state standards. If you all are familiar with science curriculum, the state of Pennsylvania adopted a new set of standards last year called STEELS. This stands for science, technology, engineering, um, environmental literacy, and sustainability. And our curriculum has been aligned to those standards, so it is available. And it's kind of a 10-week. So each of these is a 10-week program. And then we also worked with some students, some math majors at Bryn Mawr College, a wonderful group of students who helped us develop math lessons for both fifth and sixth grade. So it's both science and math. So, and then we've also started developing ninth grade lessons in carbon markets. And this is all free. It's on our website. So I'm very happy to open up now and answer any questions that anybody may have.
Frank had a question in the chat. Frank, would you like to say it or do you want me to read it?
Whatever you prefer.
You can read it or say it.
Thanks. Thanks for the information tonight. I think at the beginning of the presentation, you said the details of the Solar for School grants hasn't been finalized yet.
Correct.
If that's okay, do we have a ballpark? Do we know when we can expect to get some of the details at that level?
Yes, the state has to produce this by roughly October 1st. So we are expecting the DCED to finalize these guidelines by October 1st.
Okay, and then related to that, do we know when we'll have finalization on how they're going to distribute the money? You mentioned that there could be some challenges there.
Um, they, I know that Liz Fiedler anticipates that the money will be available immediately. So there's a lot of pressure on DCED to, to be able to roll the program out. Um, when I met this morning with Minnesota, what they do is they have two deadlines each year. So it's not just one time in the year. It's two deadlines. I think that's very useful to have a very specific date so that schools know that they've got to get all of their information together by a specific date. Um, and that is what I'm hoping that Pennsylvania will do also, so that there will be two times of the year that schools can apply, not just one, but two. And I think that's really the fairest way to do it. So that's what we're going to be meeting with them on Monday, and I'm going to be really encouraging them to do that.
So you expect there will be enough funding no matter how many schools apply for this program?
No,
Okay,
no, I don't. I don't. $25 million is not a huge amount. So they're going to be faced with a very tough decision. Do they give huge grants to just a few schools, or do they give smaller grants to a lot of schools? And that's again a decision that they're going to have to make. The
so
demand
again,
the demand for this will be very high.
that's sort of my question. When will they make that decision?
Um, I can't tell you. I don't know exactly, when they'll make that decision. The language in the law says that the grants can be up to 50% of the system. And in Pennsylvania, we are seeing school systems go in that are quite large. So I am, you know, I'm going to encourage them to fund a lot of schools, to be honest. So we'll see what happens. The representative, Liz Fiedler, is very, very serious about this becoming an ongoing program. So her vision is that this will be very successful out of the gate. The money will go really quickly, and then you know, schools will show that this is working, they're saving money, and the legislature will allocate additional funding in the future. We'll see. I can tell you that if this is rolled out correctly, every school will save money. And on the basis of that, this is going to become a very popular program with legislators. And knowing Liz, she's going to want to make sure that legislators understand how successful this is. So, we have the potential to make this a really good program.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And again, the toolkit does talk a lot about schools, but everything that applies here applies also, everything in the toolkit applies to all nonprofits. So whether it's a municipal building, a hospital, any tax exempt entity, the IRS treatment is the same. So it's not, churches, all of this information is relevant to any nonprofit entity. Yes, Mr. Hyland?
Hi, just a question. In the part of Western PA where I'm from, there's a lot of anti-solar propaganda going around. Someone tried to put in a solar farm and people were up in arms about it. Do you have any resources to provide to school board members who have been influenced by this kind of propaganda?
Well, I think that the most important thing is the savings. And the toolkit does have a few, we have, I think, only 3 case studies in there, but those schools, for example, the school that I showed you on the first slide, Steelton High Spire, this is a very poor school district. It's the district right just west of Harrisburg, very small, kind of a shrinking town. Steelton The name of the town is named after, this is America's first steel mill. So, this is a very, very old steel town. And when steel production began to leave Pennsylvania back, decades ago, the population of the town declined and the incomes declined because their major employer left. So it's a very, very poor district. And the superintendent is a fantastic guy, absolutely determined to plug his budget gap. So he went to solar in order to save money, just, pure and simple, save money, plug the budget gap. And he's been saving, he did a PPA, a power purchase agreement. And every year for the first 5 years, I think if I'm remembering correctly, he was saving about $18,000. And then the system ownership reverted to the school. And PPAs can be structured that way so that you have a lease, you're paying a lease agreement for a certain period of time, and then after that window, the school owns the system. I'm sorry, it was 8 years. So he now owns the system. Once he owned the system, he's saving over $100,000 a year. So it's a no-brainer for him. It's just an absolute no-brainer. And I think that schools really are faced. So the thing to really help schools understand is that these rate increases, Pennsylvania, every major utility in Pennsylvania had a rate increase 2 years ago. Those rate increases were very large. And now many utilities have asked for another rate increase. So in PECO's territory, for example, we had a rate increase 2 years ago. It was about, for residential customers, it was 12.5%. Now PECO's asking for another 30%. So, a school really cannot handle a bump in a budget item as big as energy in 1 year without notice. There's no way for them to come up with that money. Where are they going to get it? So for a school district, really the savings and the stability of the price is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think out here, it would be helpful if there was, some way of directing folks to information, because they're getting a lot of misinformation, not about the savings, but apparently there's these views that this is dangerous to your health, that chemicals are going to leak out of it and get into your water and stuff like that. And it's killing solar projects out here. So if there's anything like that that can be added to your toolkit, I think that would be helpful for Western PA.
That's interesting. All of that is nonsense.
I know it is, but I mean, it killed a solar farm project out here, and mayor of a local town was one of the people killing it. So I
Mhm.
would imagine the school board people are going to be hard to convince on this. I would imagine that the administrators at the school will be like you say, that we're going to save a lot of money, but
Mhm.
I think the oil and gas industry has put out this propaganda to scare people. So
Yeah.
just thought I'd pass that along.
Oh, yeah. The oil and gas industry will never stop doing that. That's the way they work. And they will buy people off, and it's never going to stop. So the best way to deal with it is really just to be very direct, I think, and factual, and come back at all of this nonsense with facts. Um, we didn't include that kind of information in the toolkit, but that's good feedback.
And Margaret has two questions. Margaret, would you like to state them?
Certainly. When the application process has been established at the end of September or early in October, it's going to be pretty important for schools to get moving promptly. How are the public, or actually more importantly, eligible schools, going to be informed that that application gate has opened and that the materials for applying are now available?
I think that's a perfect question. That's a great question, and one that we will ask DCED on Monday. Um, I have to say, and I hope there's nobody here from the state, but I have to say that the state of Pennsylvania does not do a great job with outreach. Honestly, it's amazing to me. And they do have a lot on their plate now. There's so much going on with the IRA and all kinds of new programs, and many parts of the state government have been underfunded for years. So, I understand that they're really pressed. But I will say that Liz Fiedler, I don't know if you know Liz's background. Liz was in media. She worked for HYY, WHYY. And she comes from a communications background. She's brilliant at communications. And, I think that Liz will make sure that there will be a really good rollout, a good public rollout of the program. She is the mother of two children who go to public school, and she's just determined to make this work. So we'll, I don't have a clear answer to that, but it's a great question.
My second question is related to how the money will be distributed. And I completely understand your feeling that, we want to reach as many schools as possible. But I'm concerned that low-income districts are going to get trampled in the stampede, that there will be, in wealthier districts, there are going to be people who know how to jump on top of grant applications and get moving. So I think that low-income districts may be somewhat disadvantaged to begin with, but what I'm really concerned about is that for some of them, these grants are going to be absolutely make or break in terms of whether they can do the project.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you need, 10X and you get 5X, then that's the end of the plan.
Right.
So I'm wondering whether there's any intention to prioritize some of the lower income districts in terms of the distribution of this money.
The law provides for an allocation based not on geography, but on population.
Okay.
And so it says that DCED has to divide the state into three roughly equal bins by population. So, for example, 30% of the state lives in Philadelphia. So you could say, okay, well, Philly gets a third of the money. So, there are different ways to do this, but so that is some, way of allocating the funds. One of the things I learned this morning with Minnesota is their program is needs based.
Yeah.
So the poorer school districts are prioritized. So that's an additional layer that DCED could decide to do, that the legislation doesn't prescribe. I can't say whether they'll think about doing that. I will say that, for me, overcoming what Jim Highland just talked about, this BS, I'll call it, that the fossil fuel industry keeps doing, overcoming that is really important. It's really, really important. So, and I can't say whether, DCED will make this a needs-based program, but there is this population distribution requirement in the law.
Okay, thank you.
We're seeing a whole bunch of comments in the chat about the disinformation about not only the fossil fuel industries, but firefighters are worried about solar on roofs. So I'm wondering, Liz, if your organization could possibly develop some talking points up to counter all this disinformation?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's a lot of good, myth busting information out there already. The issue about firefighters, every solar system is required to have an automatic shutoff. So in the event that a building has a fire, the solar system will automatically, it's designed to automatically shut down. And if that should fail for any reason, the first thing the firefighters do when they get to the property is an automatic shut off. So the system is inert. The system itself is not flammable. It can burn if the heat is extraordinary. Anything can burn if the heat is extraordinary. But it's not going to be the source of a fire. So that's just another one of those myths. One of the funniest things oh gosh, what was this one? One school district had some bizarre thing about oh what was it? Yeah, they were afraid that a shooter would get up on the roof of the school and try to, and somehow they connected this to the solar system. I was like, what? Like, I mean, how is a shooter going to use a ladder to get up on the roof of I mean, so people come up with all kinds of nutty ideas. But anyway, I think the best way to deal with these things is to just counter it directly and help people climb down from whatever misinformation they've gotten themselves into.
So your toolkit is always so helpful. I'm wondering if there could be another step that's maybe step 2 or 1A or something, which is before you even get started, you've got to convince the people in your community, and particularly the school district people, that this is something that it makes sense to them, and that it's not a lot of, it's not dangerous. They're not going to be getting a lot of bad things. The students are not going to be inhaling anything that's dangerous or whatever, because the misinformation, disinformation is out there, and I think it'll put the kibosh on a lot of projects.
Yeah, I think as the grant program rolls along, the good PR, the good information, the good news, the success of these projects it's like everything else, anything that's new or relatively new, it takes a little minute for it to get really past this initial inertia. So I think the school districts in Pennsylvania that have already gone solar are almost 100%. I did find this one school out of about 30 that was not saving money yet, but even that school had a very positive experience, and now they are saving money. So that's one of the reasons that we did the toolkit, was to make this a slam dunk, just to make it 100% guarantee that every school is going to have a positive experience. It's extremely important that every school succeed and every school save money, every school have a good experience with an installer, every school feel, like they've made the right decisions. So all of that's key. One thing that I neglected to mention is that free technical assistance is available now in Pennsylvania through the Pennsylvania Solar Center. This is a solar center that's a nonprofit corporation that's based in Western Pennsylvania. They have a program called Get Solar, GET, Get Solar, and that they can provide free technical assistance. As DCED implements this program, the grant program, they may also fund technical assistance. So there may be some change in that. So we don't know yet, but there will be access to technical assistance for schools.
So a question that Jim raised, can we disseminate this to school boards? Of course.
Yes.
We are recording this, and anybody wants, in about a week or so, you'll get an email saying, here's the recording from this session, and it is free for you to do any way that you wish. Send it to school boards, send it to decision makers. And as Liz said, this is not just for schools. All of this applies to not-for-profit buildings, municipal buildings, etc. So because this is Interfaith Power and Light, you might be connected with a church or a mosque or something like that. All of these steps should also work for them too.
Yes.
So,
There are types of financing. Schools have access to public financing, and so do municipal buildings. So private entities, private nonprofit does not have access to that kind of financing. So there are a few things in here that don't apply to nonprofits, that apply to public buildings, but not private buildings. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
But all the rest of it applies.
So the reason we had this meeting is because we want to make sure we get the message out so that people hear about it and can confront the misinformation and start talking it up in their school districts. So usually we end with, thank you so much, Liz, by the way, yours was fabulous. As usual, it was very well thought out, very clear, very easy for us to follow the steps and understand exactly what to do. And now that we always end with an action, and the action that we would like to have is for all of you to be thinking about, who do you know in a school district? Do you know the superintendent? Do you know the school board? Do you know the head of finance, the treasurer, or whoever? Who can you talk to? Who can you start making an individual pitch to? And I know the Sierra Club is trying to identify people in school districts, and they also will help you develop these things. So there's a lot of resources out there for people to develop and use this, so that people will have, get the school boards to know about this. And I totally agree that if your school board is a poor school district, you have more to gain by it, because you have, you don't have the grantsmanship that larger schools or richer school districts have. So these steps will be very, very helpful.
Just to give you a sense of the potential savings, the Philadelphia Energy Authority did an analysis of Philly public schools and came up with a number of 1 million. Every public school, on average, Philadelphia public schools will save $1 million each by going solar. Now that's over the life of the system. That's over a 25-year span, but $1 million in savings per school in Philly, that's just like, it's incredible. So it's really, really important for schools to give this a hard look.
Yep. I put solar panels on my house, and I thought it was the best investment I ever made in my house compared to everything else I did, because this one saved money, as opposed to just doing other things. But I can't stress enough the importance of all of us trying to get as much solar on every roof or every yard that we possibly can. And schools are a perfect place for it, because they're a large surface. And school boards, as Liz started her presentation with, have a huge expenses in it of their electricity costs, their energy costs, and it's only going to get much, much more expensive.
Right. So you can, if you share those slides, I don't know, Phyllis, if you do, but my email is there. So if you've got questions as you go along, please just reach out. I'll be happy to help.
Yep. Thank you. This is a wonderful, wonderful resource, Liz, that you created, and it's so clear. And you, as usual, were clear in your presentation, answered all questions. And we just hope that the state makes the right decisions in terms of how to allocate the money.
Yeah. No, I'm have confidence.
Oh, good. It's always good to have confidence in something in our state.
Well, we hope this will be the first piece of solar legislation with many more to come. We are, as all of you know, we are far behind other states, and we need to start catching up in a hurry.
Yeah, for sure. And success breeds success.
Absolutely.
So thank you all very much. If you have one or anybody have any final questions or comments?
Yeah, I was just going to add that in terms of public resistance to solar and sort of emotional politicized arguments, for some of us, climate change is front and center, and anything that we can do to mitigate it is important. And you wouldn't really have to feature that argument at all in sensitive communities. You could go, straight with the financial arguments.
Yeah.
And not tread on that ground at all. You don't need it. And the people who care about it in a positive way are already going to know the advantage. And you may be able to avoid triggering that response.
One of the things that's important for people to know in Pennsylvania is that solar is the most popular form of energy in the entire state, in rural areas and urban areas, Republican areas and Democratic areas. When Pennsylvanians are asked the question, what is your favorite form of energy? 81% of Pennsylvanians responded rooftop solar.
Wow.
And that was way higher than any other form of energy. So the reasons that conservatives like solar is that it's energy independence. They like the self-sufficiency, they like the reliability, they like the control. It gives people direct control over their energy. And that's wonderful, you know? Everybody has different reasons for liking solar, which is great because solar has many, many different attributes. It's a very simple resource, but also very complex. So it doesn't matter why you like it, but just know that the rural areas that the BS that's put out by the fossil fuel industry is regrettable, but it is easy to see through it. And I think it's important to just take it head on.
And
Liz?
saving money is something that everybody wants to do. Yes, Alan.
Could you put your email in the chat, please, for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I can tell you Liz responds to emails.
A friend said to me one time, Liz, you're the busiest person I know, and you always respond to emails. And I said, well, maybe that's why I'm busy.
So thank you all very much. Contact your school board, your school district, any person that you can, and have a good rest of the summer. Enjoy the cool weather that we're having these couple of days. It will get hot again, but we can take advantage and enjoy and be outside now. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Everyone.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.